Hello, and welcome to the Project Elected podcast. Project Elect is a nonpartisan nonprofit whose goal is pretty simple. We want to get more Latter-day Saint women involved in public service. On this podcast, we interview amazing Latter-day Saint women who are involved in public service. Hi, my name is Audrey Perry-Martin. I'm the founder of Project Elect and the host of this podcast. I am thrilled to be here today with Jillaire McMillan. She is running for House District 19 in Colorado. It's a little bit north of Denver, Colorado. And she has had a really interesting experience during her campaign. And I am so excited that she agreed to take some time today to talk to us about it. Jillaire, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Audrey. I'm really excited to talk with Project Elect listeners.
Yeah, me too. And we've known each other kind of not well, but through email for quite a while with Project Elect and MWAG and different organizations we've been a part of. So I'm excited to hear your whole story. Not your whole story, but a part of your story. To start out, would you just maybe introduce yourself a little bit and then tell us how you came to run for office? Because you have kind of a very different route to it that I would love our listeners to hear.
Yes. So I live in Longmont, Colorado, which is important to my story. I actually live in an unincorporated part of Weld County, Colorado. The city of Longmont is in Boulder County, Colorado. So I live really close to the county line and don't live in an actual municipality. My family and I moved here almost 8 years ago. I have 4 kids. 2 of them are now out of high school. One is serving a mission for the church in Tucson, Arizona, speaking Spanish. And one is a senior at Colorado State University. And then my 2 at home are junior and freshman in high school. My husband and I started a small business about 5.5 years ago, and we sell waterproof robotics components, which is like this super niche industry that he did because he is an engineer and has background in unmanned boats and planes and things. That's a whole other story for a whole other podcast, probably. I run all the financial and like human resources side of the business, kind of part-time. He works at it full-time. We have hired our 5th employee this summer. So it's really exciting to have the company have grown out of our basement into like a real grown-up business that is providing for our family as well as being able to employ other people. But in addition to that, I've mostly been a stay-at-home mom for the last almost 22 years. My oldest turns 22 in a couple of weeks. So that's given me a lot of time to be a major volunteer. And so when my kids started going to school, I just got really involved in their classrooms and in the PTA. So I've been the PTA president and the PTO president at the elementary school and the middle school. And now I'm the president of the High School Education Foundation. I always get really involved there. My callings in the church have given me a lot of leadership experience there as well. I've done all the things. And then I've also been a leader in our neighborhoods. For the last 7.5 years, I've been really involved with Mormon Women for Ethical Government, MWAG. And the last 3 years, I've been the director of volunteers there. But I am currently on a leave of absence from MWAG because 9 weeks today, I became my party's nominee for the Colorado State Legislature. What happened was the current representative for District 19 decided to end her reelection campaign. So in July, she announced that she was no longer going to seek reelection. She did not step down from her position. So she still is the representative until January when the new legislature will be sworn in. But she stepped out of the race. And so the process here in Colorado for the Democratic Party is to hold a vacancy in nomination committee. And so what they did is because, as I said, I live really close to a county line. So the district that I will represent, being positive there, straddles the county line and is in both Boulder County and Weld County. And so they got party leaders, anybody who was like on the Weld County Democratic Party committee or the Boulder County, but they have to live in my district. And then there's also district committee members. And then they also invited precinct organizers. And they created a committee of, I think it was 31 people, and they would decide who would be the nominee. And what happened was the party sent out an email saying that there was this vacancy now on the ballot, and they were looking for anyone who was a serious candidate. And I got the email on a Friday afternoon in the end of July. I had just come back from a day at the lake with my kids. And the day before had actually sent my missionary off to the missionary training center in Mexico City and got this email. And my heart started thumping because I thought, oh my gosh, like maybe this is my opportunity. So I have thought about running for office for a long time. I jokingly, but I think it's like half jokingly because it's half serious, tell people it's ever since I ran for class president in the 7th grade, right? I think I'm a natural leader and I've just always had this desire to be involved. That's why I've been the PTA president and done all those things. I just feel a desire and a duty to get involved because I know that I have the time and some of the skills and ideas and qualities that I think we want in leaders. For several years now, I've, been thinking about wanting to run for office and kind of been looking at how to prepare to do that. And maybe we can talk about that more in a minute, but had my hesitations and definitely wasn't planning to run this year because there was an incumbent. But I got this email and I thought, oh my gosh, maybe this is the opportunity to do it. And so the quicker version now is I called a few people, and I could talk more about that in a minute too, and emailed asking more questions. And basically, I think Sunday night, so about 48 hours after I got the email, maybe 50 hours, I declared my intent to be a candidate for the vacancy. There were 3 men who ran against me. And then I basically ran this campaign for about 10 days where I reached out to every member of the vacancy committee and tried to convince them why I would be the best candidate to send to the general election. On the night of August 8th, we had a Zoom meeting that started with a candidate forum. And so all of the candidates had a chance to make opening statements and answer specific questions that were asked. Then at the end of that candidate forum, they held a vote. I actually did not think I would win because I'd been told by some other people I probably wouldn't win because one of the men running against me had a lot more connections in the party, including one of the state senators who was on the committee. I'd spoken with her and she seconded his nomination. She was like endorsing him basically. And so I just thought I'm going to show up and do my very best job so I don't look like an idiot. And I prepared anticipated issues, prepared statements, and timed myself. I really practiced a lot. And after the first round of voting, I had 47% of the votes. And you had to have 50%. It wasn't just a plurality. You had to have a majority. That was the first moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I might actually win. And so they did do a second round of votes where they took the bottom 2. They just left the 2 top vote getters in and did a second round of votes. And I won. And so I became the candidate on August 8th. It is now October 10th. So it has been 9 weeks. And it has been a whirlwind, but I'm officially on the November ballot and running this race.
That's an incredible story. I can't help but think about how it's similar to Kamala Harris this year, right?
I do make that joke. Not every audience loves it. People who are like, I don't understand what happened. And I'll say, the other representative pulled a Joe Biden and I'm Colorado's Kamala. And so they laugh. Yeah. And then they're like, oh, okay. Because it's a confusing, unusual situation, except we have a national example of it this year. So people are like, oh, okay, we get what's happening.
It's like
here.
that. Okay. I got it. I got it.
The process is a little bit different. We didn't have a full nominating convention, but the vacancy nomination was. Those people represented the party leadership. Mm-hmm. And so they got to choose who was on the ballot because parties control who their nominees are.
Yeah. In some states, not in California. So I love that story. I love especially how you'd been thinking about it for a long time, and then suddenly the opportunity came and you were ready to seize it within 48, 24, whatever hours, because you had been thinking of it. Because a lot of times those opportunities don't come often. And where there's not an incumbent in the race and the incumbent advantage is real. And so you have to be prepared if somebody drops out like that or an opening is there, that you take it, even if it may be you're at the lake with your kids, right?
Yeah. And I feel, Audrey, there were a couple of things that were really important, I think, that I'd love to share that feel like just some pretty cool coincidences. So as I said, I've been thinking about this for years. My involvement in MWEG has definitely helped prepare me more. It's a women's empowerment organization. I think a lot of your listeners will probably know about the organization. I've learned so much more about issues and how to be more media literate. So I pay more attention to the news than I used to and feel like I have a good grasp on issues and the stories of the day. I know how to reach out to my elected officials, and I've written things and worked with other people. So I had all this experience that gave me a lot of confidence. And so I really thought about this for a long time and really had a prompting several years ago that I should run for office and that the state legislature might be a good option for me. But at the time, there was a definite thinking I didn't need to do it right then. And it was like in 5 or 10 years. And in my mind, that thought, okay, that gives me time to prepare for my kids to be older, to be in a place that would be better for our family. And so I did start doing things to try to figure out. I started following Project Elect, and you guys used to do a lunchtime Zoom. I can't remember what you called it, but I would join and I'd bring my lunch to my desk and you had different guests come on. And so it was like this podcast, but more casual because I could ask questions and things. And I remember Becky Edwards being on one time and she said, if you feel called to do it, do it. She just was trying to get us over that fear of holding back or whatever the fear was about running for office. So I actually wrote that on a sticky note and it's above my desk. Still, it's faded now, but it says, if you feel called to do it, do it. And it was that reminder that I was like, to not ignore that feeling that I had that I should do this, even though it was scary because I did help someone on their campaign in 2020. And it was overwhelming to me. I came home to my husband and I said, I don't know enough people. I don't know how to do this. How am I going to do this? And I was scared. I was nervous. But my husband's been really supportive of me all along. He actually bought me a book for my birthday last year or maybe 2 years ago about how to run for office. So I read that. I've just tried to continue to pay attention to different things. And then had really, again, though, started to feel like I'm still not prepared. What can I do to prepare? And so this summer, I started looking into, should I maybe get a master's in public administration? Should I learn more about that? So I looked into some of those programs. I wasn't sure I wanted to go back to school. And I finally settled on the idea of applying for some commissions and boards through the governor's office, because there are a lot of these commissions that laws establish that say, we need a commission to study this thing, or there is a board of Colorado history. And because I have a history degree, I thought, ooh, that sounds really cool. Like I could be on that board. And there was one that was a board about volunteerism and being the director of volunteers for MWAG. I was like, I have experience in that. That would be really interesting. And so I looked into that. I cleaned up my resume for the first time in a couple of years and looked into all these boards and commissions. And on Thursday, whatever the date was, I submitted my application to some boards and commissions. And on Friday, I found out about the opening in the ballot. And it was my husband who has been like, do you think that was a coincidence? That's a pretty strong coincidence. So he's really been supportive in that way. I think you were really preparing the timing, like I was on that track. There were things I still didn't know how to do, and I've had to learn a lot. There is a huge learning curve, but I feel like there were some neat things that kind of prepared me to be ready right now.
You're like the textbook Project Elect example here. Going to our lunch and learn, our power hours, we call them.
That's right.
And then waiting till the season was right and applying to boards and commissions. These are all the things we talk about so often. And I feel like somebody's listening.
Yes, you should listen. Audrey knows what she's talking about.
I love it. And it's incredible that you did it and you did it this way and you're so positive. I know you haven't had an easy breezy campaign. You don't have a lot of time to prepare and you've had some, negativity thrown at you because you're in a tight race, right?
Yeah, my race is considered the third most competitive in the state of Colorado for the House. The previous race was won by just 1,600 votes. Mm-hmm. And it's a fairly new district, so we also don't have a lot of data on it because after the 2020 census, the lines in Colorado were redistricted by our independent redistricting commission. And so my opponent was my representative from 2020 to 2022. And then he ran again in 2022, but the district had changed a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I don't think he was expecting to lose. And then he lost, and now he's running a third time. But the demographics of the district are a little different than they were in 4 years ago versus what they are now. But it is still considered a tight race. And so the Democratic Party has identified it as the third most competitive. And it appears that the Republican Party and some other PACs are coming after me. I was at church 2 weeks ago, the last week in September, and I've chosen to take Sundays off from the campaign. I've chosen I'm going to observe the Sabbath. And people have been mostly really respectful of that. Some of them don't understand it, but I just say, Mostly they get it. And I say it's my Sabbath. I find that if I can have a day of rest and worship and time with my family, I will get more done in the remaining 6 days. So that's been a really important thing that I wouldn't say I struggled with. I had to figure it out because people were offering things like, let's host a meet and greet for you. Can you come over on a Sunday afternoon? And when someone's offering to do something to help you, it's really hard to say, nope, that's not going to work for me. You need to work around my schedule. But I've also learned as a candidate, sometimes you have to be self-centered for a while because everyone is asking about you all the time. Sometimes I'll feel bad. I'll be at the end of a conversation. I'll be like, I didn't ask them anything about themselves. But it's because, like, especially with other elected officials, they're like, people already know about me. I'm out in public already. I want to know about you because you're new. But again, so I'm trying to observe the Sabbath day and church had ended. I'm walking down the hall and one of the young adults in our ward says, hey, Sister McMillan, we got some hate mail about you this week. And it's not hate mail exactly, but I was like, wait, what? And he was like, yeah, these people were saying this stuff about you. And I was like, oh my goodness. I went to choir practice. I'm in the ward choir. And my friends there and one of them was the mother of this young adult. And she said, oh, I didn't know if you'd want, I was like, you guys, why aren't you sending me pictures of these? I want to know. And one of them said, I thought your phone would be blowing up. Everyone would already be telling you about them. And the other one said, I didn't know if you'd want to see them. And I was like, of course I want to know. It was unsettling and I was frustrated. I was like, why? I wish they had told me 3 days sooner when they got them so that I didn't have to confront it on my day off. So I did break my rule a little bit. I came home and I texted my campaign consultant and was like, look. And basically, it's been really interesting, though, to see how it is, what they do. And it's given me new insight on what other negative, like for other candidates, like definitely question. Look at the footnotes. Go look at the original source. Because if people were to look at the footnotes on the things I'm being accused of, they would see how they've been twisted a bit to either misrepresent the position I took. In one case, they had to go back 7 years and find something that MWEG was actually advocating against. And then they twisted it in a way that there is something new happening now. It was related to the child tax credit, which was rolled up in another larger tax break 7 years ago that we advocated against. But now that it's standalone, we're very much for it. And I've actually done active meetings with my congressional offices about it. But the way it's being construed now is they're saying that I am against helping families save money. And so that's been interesting. But I would say, so it's a little unsettling, but I feel like I've been able to be positive about it for 2 reasons. Maybe 3. I don't know. I know what's true. But also what's been cool is that my friends, especially my friends at church who are not super politically inclined, who have not really known how to engage on my campaign, they're getting fired up. They're like unaffiliated and even like Republican voters who aren't registered Democrats like me, who are like, Jillaire, we just cannot believe people are saying these things about you. What can we do? What can we do? And so some of them have started donating to my campaign. They are asking for yard signs. They are going to come out and knock doors with me. And I also got a Facebook message from a church member who is not in my stake. He's in my district, but lives too far south. And so I don't know who he is. But he said, I have been getting these mailers. And because I'm guessing because the footnotes mentioned Mormon Women for Ethical Government, it pricked him. And he learned that I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And he said, as a member of the church, I'm really offended by this. And he said, it tells me everything I need to know about your opponent, which I should note. His campaign has not sent out anything. They're all like independent PACs, but not all voters recognize that. And so in this case, the mailers are backfiring because the end of the message from this man said, I just want you to know that this household of lifelong Republicans will be voting for you in November. That made me feel so good to know that there are people out there who are discerning, that they're looking at it and saying, these attacks seem really strong. Let me dig a little deeper, or I don't like the negativity of politics. And so the second reason I'm not getting it down is I figure I've only been the candidate. Like this was probably 7 weeks into my campaign. They feel threatened. So it's vaguely flattering that they feel like they need to attack me when I'm so brand new, that it means I'm obviously doing some things right. I'm showing up as a strong candidate. And so there are people out there that are like, we need to stop her, even though at the beginning, I think a lot of people thought this guy has name recognition. This woman's coming out of nowhere. She's coming in late. She's never going to catch up. So I've decided to just flip it on my head and say, they obviously think I'm going to win, so they have to do something to try to stop me. And so that's one way I've been able to combat the feelings of, oh man, these are really mean, or they're telling lies about me.
Yeah, and I like how you just turned on your head and you showed me one of those mailers and you were kind of laughing about it. This is funny. This is ridiculous, which I love because most of my day right now, because I'm an election lawyer, so I get all the ads and I have to approve them and make sure what they're saying is technically true. And so I've done thousands and thousands of negative ads and confirming the research. And the way they twist the words, I'm telling you, you should always look up the original source because it usually is not even close to what they're implying it is. And they can apply it without actually outright lying. And as long as they have some source to back it up, they're going to be okay legally. And so they get away with all kinds of stuff. And it's fascinating to see that. And as the candidate, that would be hard to have people getting into their homes, these mailers that are not outright lies, but great exaggerations or twists on the truth. And so, yeah, I like your advice to look up the footnotes and, and go to the original source.
And my first I would say I'm probably a little more chill about it now than I was the first, because it is frustrating to be accused of something that's false. That you can say, they say I'm against the child tax credit. Let me introduce you to that staffer that recognized me 6 months later when I met him again because I went to advocate for the child tax credit. Like that made me angry. And I was like, are people going to look at the footnotes? And my husband and my son were like, no, they're not. Like they're my reality check. But one of the things that we've also done, my campaign team is really smart. We've created a Get the Facts page on my website. And it'll go out via text. I think it actually did yesterday. So if people want to go to my website now, we have like several pointed things that say, here's the myth that's out there about Jillaire, and here's the fact.
Yeah.
And so we're able to counteract that. And I don't know how many people are seeing it. I think we actually got several hits on the website, more than several, maybe even 200 or something, or I might be exaggerating that, but we got hits. And so that also makes me feel better that we were able to combat the lies with putting my truth out there. At least not everyone will see it, but people who are really invested in studying their candidates, I think will go to my website and now they can look at that and see it. That made me feel better to know that there was something I could do. And then again, like I said, my opponent isn't sending these directly from his campaign. And so we're being really careful. I'm like, I do not want to go negative. I'm actually using the phrase in a lot of my speeches and like at the door that I want to bring positivity to politics. Because yes, I'm a registered Democrat, but as we know, a lot of church members are more conservative. And so I am surrounded by people who don't agree with me politically that I love, that I serve alongside in church callings and that I minister to and who minister to me. And so it's just not a part of my life experience and my nature to see people of different political backgrounds as enemies. Yeah. And then especially my work with MWEG, which is all about peacemaking in the public sphere and looking at things through a principled lens rather than a partisan lens has also really helped. I just say, yes, I'm a Democrat, but let me talk to you about my experience working with people from all across the political spectrum. And that's really been a positive thing, especially about 50% of the voters in my district are unaffiliated.
Really?
And yeah, they lean, when you go out knocking doors, you have a targeted list and it tells me I'm knocking on the door of an unaffiliated voter. And I will get people say, well, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, so go away or whatever. And I'm like, well, your voter registration actually says you're unaffiliated. So some people aren't sure, but they definitely lean one way or the other. But I think by registering unaffiliated, a lot of people are trying to tell us we're tired of the extremes. And so I was worried as I had this desire and prompting to run for office that I would never be partisan enough to get on the ballot through the party and through the primary process, or that I wouldn't be able to make enough connections in the party for them to support me. And I was anxious about that. I think I said before, in the vacancy, I'd been told there was one of the other candidates would probably win because more people knew him. And so I was anxious about that, but I feel like this was a great opportunity for me to come in a different way. And so I guess I'd say to anyone else out there who's considering running for office and kind of worried about the partisan game you have to play sometimes, for me, particularly because I'm in a swing district, I was able to use that to let people know you should pick someone who's not super partisan because most of our voters aren't. And so if you really want to find someone who yeah, is a Democrat, I believe in a lot of the policies and the issues that are important to you, but I also can appeal to people and the nuance and the peacemaking kindness that more Americans want to see in the political process. And
Yeah.
I think that was one of the reasons why I was nervous at first, because so many of the people that I had to convince were the people who were party leaders. They have volunteered to help in the party. So by nature, they are a little more partisan. So I had to kind of appeal to their nature of what's really going to get someone elected. You need to think about the greater voter demographic we have in our district. But as I go around and knock doors, people really connect with that. They are tired of the vitriol. They're tired of the extremism. They're tired of people not talking to each other just because they belong to different parties.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that thing that was holding me back a little bit and making me nervous about becoming the candidate has actually been the strongest way that I can connect with voters, and a real hallmark of my campaign to be able to say, I can do this. And that's been really cool to be able to stay true to myself and see that people connect with it, people respond.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it's so hard in some of these partisan races because the party leadership and the people who vote in primaries are a lot more partisan generally than the general election voter. And the general election voter, for the most part, a wider majority of them aren't super partisan. They're unaffiliated or like loosely affiliated with the party and are really sick of all the partisanship and the extremism and the you're the enemy and you're evil and we have to destroy you or everyone's going to die type thing that you get on both extreme party extremes. Yeah, that's like really fear-based. And most Americans don't really relate to that. And so, but it's hard to get through the party process without throwing out that red meat that then in the general election is not how you want to be.
Yeah. And so that was a hard part about me in the vacancy committee. But I finally had to say, like, point out to them, this is a swing district. I referenced my membership in the church and said, it has the reputation for being more conservative. So I said, so I've been practicing what it means to be a Democrat in a swing district my whole life.
Yeah.
And I think it was a chuckle kind of joke, but also really true for me to be able to say, and I think I had that advantage, like in a primary where, like you said, you get more of the partisan voters out there, in that I had probably even more partisan people on the committee, but there were fewer of them. And so I was able to make some real individual connections. I called them on the phone. I stopped by their houses. I'd almost forgotten to tell you one of the best stories, though. I feel like we need this on record. During the vacancy committee, I took my daughter, who's 21, with me to drive and map out so that we could be efficient where we were going. And I could take notes when I got back in the car while she was driving. And so she mostly stayed in the car and read her book. There was one house I couldn't find the door and it was a little tricky. We did not fully read the sign about the dogs. There was a sign about dogs and about keeping the gate closed. And I was like, okay. And I will say, I'm not a big dog person because I'm allergic to dogs. So I don't touch them, but I'm okay with them. I'm usually not afraid of them. I'm like, hey, like back off. I failed to read the last line of the sign that said, do not enter without permission of owner. So we went in and I thought, I'm not afraid. I'm going to go in and we'll keep the gate closed. Well, there was an open dog door. So note, if there's ever an open dog door, don't knock on the door. Don't ring the doorbell. Just leave. We knocked on the door. 2 pit bulls came out and I was bit by a pit bull on my leg. Yes, I had pants on. So fortunately, it didn't break the skin. There was no blood. My daughter had shorts and fortunately, she only got scratched. So we were screaming. We were running. Like my shoes fell off. It was pretty crazy, but it's like I got the biggest bruise. It was on the side of my shin and it was bruised for 3 weeks. So that's my big, like, crazy campaign story, is that I was so dedicated to this that I confronted a pit bull and
got attacked by a pit bull.
I got attacked by a pit bull and we did go home after that house. We had more houses and not just because but I'd lost my shoes. We did get them back a few days later. I mean, it was embarrassing because the sign did say don't enter. And so even though I think it's maybe not a good idea to have dogs that attack someone who just knocks the door, but I was trespassing technically. So I did email the committee member and said, I understand if you don't want to vote for me since I can't read signs. So that was the big scary thing. But since then, It's not so scary. People are actually very nice, most people. And I think a lot of people think it's cool when a candidate comes by. And so that's been a really fun part. It's hard work, but it's actually pretty enjoyable to knock doors and just say, "Hi, I'm Jillaire McMillan and I'm running for the State House of Representatives and just out today trying to meet voters. Tell people about myself and find out what you care about."
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. And it's an opportunity to hear from them too and make them feel a connection. I don't really love knocking doors.
I do think it's probably different when you're the candidate.
Yeah.
In a way. I have done it as a volunteer. Like I did it in 2020, which was interesting. We did a lot more of just straight literature dropping because it was the pandemic. The candidate did branded masks for us. So we all had masks with her logo on it, which I thought was smart. And so we really played it by ear with some people, some people we would talk to. It was very different campaigning then. But I do think it helps. Volunteers are really essential. And so that would be one thing I would say too to listeners. Maybe are thinking about running for office and they don't know if they want to. Go volunteer for a campaign and you'll get a little taste of what it's like. It might scare you like it did me, but it also gave me a little reality check and made me say, okay, here's something. Now I know more about what I need to do to prepare. And it really is so helpful. It just magnifies the effort. And if you can meet somebody and then go to them and say, "I've met Jillaire and she's really great," or "I know her." And we did some canvassing a few weeks ago and we met back afterwards. And some of the women, they had gone out in a pair and they said they talked to this guy who's just a low information voter. He wasn't really connected, didn't know a lot about what was going on, but was really eager to talk to them and learn more. And when they said, "Yeah, and we met Jillaire this morning and think she's really great," and she talked and we were so impressed by her. He said, "Oh, you got to meet her? Could I meet her?" Like he thought it was really cool. Yeah. And so that's just another thing I would say is we hear so much about the national candidates and our federal candidates, but your local and your state candidates and representatives are more accessible than you think. They are your neighbors. They live nearby. And I guarantee that if you reach out, they'll be interested to talk to you.
And especially if you reach out and want to volunteer. Be very excited.
Or donate.
They're never going to turn you down. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. Sadly, we are almost out of time, which I feel like we could keep talking forever, Jillaire, but you have such a fascinating story. And I want to talk to you after the election, whether win or lose, and see your perspective after that too. So maybe we can do a follow-up episode.
Yeah, that would be fun. That would be fun.
See how it goes. We always end with an invitation from our guests to our listeners, and you just gave one, go volunteer for a campaign. But do you have anything in particular you would advise them to do to put them on the right path to considering a run for office? You were thinking about it for years. Were there things in particular that you think were especially impactful for you?
I would probably reiterate that idea to volunteer for a campaign. One of the other ideas I had this year, and I failed to do it, and then when this opportunity came up, I kicked myself. I also had the thought that I should reach out to my representative during the session. In Colorado, the legislative sessions runs from January to early May. And I had the thought, you should call her up and ask if you can come down one day and just learn more. That was one of my goals, and I didn't do it. And then this came up and I was like, shoot, you totally should have done that. You wouldn't be more prepared.
When we don't listen to that voice.
I know. So I do think that there are some things you can do. And I guess maybe it's identify whatever it is about the process that scares you or that is holding you back. If it's your own qualifications, then maybe there are a lot of courses out there. I helped research some for Project Elect, that there are organizations that want to help women, especially, but not only women, but they're set up to help you learn how to be a candidate. If you're worried more about what happens once you win, then go attend city council meetings. Whatever office you're interested in seeking, go to those meetings and just participate in some way or listen. If you're nervous about what the campaign is like, volunteer on a campaign so that you get a firsthand look. Because when we see it with our own eyes, when we just get a little bit of experience under our belts, those unknown things become less scary. Audrey and I were talking before we started the recording, and I did say, obviously, with my campaign being so short, there's a big learning curve. Nothing fully prepares you for it. And there are a lot of things that I wish I'd done better or would have done better if I'd had more time. So I'm also giving myself a lot of grace for that. It's stressful sometimes when something doesn't go right. You think, we'll do that better next time. But I'm like, I don't have very many next times because my campaign is so short. So there are things like that. But I also am just giving myself grace and figuring, I think I'm running a really great campaign. I've got good people helping me who know what they're doing. So that would be another thing I would say is there are people who know how to run campaigns themselves who don't want to be candidates, who will advise you, who will help you. And so if you can meet people like that, that's helpful too. So I just would say there's a lot more help and resources, and there are more resources out there than you realize. So you just have to start talking to people and making those connections. I've met a lot of new people since I became the candidate who also just want to help, who once, and part of it is because they care about the issues. And so they're like, we care about this issue, and it sounds like you are someone who will do it. So we will now support you, and we will bring volunteers out for you. We will do those things. It's like they care about the issue first, and then they identify you as someone who will care about their issue. And so then they like you. But then it does become genuine because then you start seeing them more at events, or they show up to help you, or you go to support their causes. And so that's been also really cool to just meet a lot of new people and to see how many good people there are trying to make the world better. And some of them are doing it by running for office. Some of them are doing it by supporting people running for office. And some of them are doing it through their own organizations that then support candidates or that inform and educate people. And that's one thing I love too, is to see how many different ways there are to make our communities better.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I like also what you said about identifying what's holding you back and identifying your fears and actually naming them and deciding what you can do about them. Because I think there's generally something that's holding us back, that's making us worried. And if we can address that, then maybe it'll be our time sooner.
I definitely had to talk to a few people. One of them was Becky Edwards, who's been a big Project Elect supporter. And she and I had previously talked, and I'd reached out to her to mentor me. And so she had said previously, like, when you're ready to run for office, you reach out to me and I'll help. And so I did reach out to her, and I was like, Becky, I have this opportunity. And she said, I'm a 100% yes. And I'm going to tell you why. And then she proceeded to, because I was like, I don't feel ready. And she said, you're ready. And so that's another thing too, is if you can find people that will champion you and be really enthusiastic, like that's been fun too. Just the friends that I tell who texted and responded in all caps with their excitement and enthusiasm. So that's another part too, is if you can get like kind of your own little cheerleading squad, that's really helpful.
Absolutely. Jillaire, it was so fun talking to you and
Same.
hearing your story and this crazy election that you've been thrown into and doing such a great job of.
Yeah,
and
it is.
Thanks
It
for
is pretty
taking time
crazy
today, because I know it's crazy. You only have had a few weeks to do this.
Yep. Yeah. I appreciate the invitation. This was a fun way to chat in a very friendly, low stakes environment, which I don't get a lot of these days.
Thank you all for listening to the Project Elected podcast. For free resources and materials, head over to projectelectwomen.org. We're also on Instagram and Facebook as Project Elect Women. We'd love for you to subscribe, rate us, or give us a review on iTunes. So until next time, thank you.